guys, welcome to the Elephant Room. Today I have some great influential youth leaders from around our nation that we're going to sit together and just have an authentic conversation on this new normal of youth ministry. We all know the last 4 weeks have been a very trying time, a volatile time, a time where we're just trying to figure it out together. But there are some principles that I believe that we can hold on to that can be like a navigational chart as we go through this kind of crazy, the waves of these next few weeks. And not only that we can set a foundation to raise the level of our practical stewardship for our youth ministry as a whole, even when this virus ends.
My name is Beau Dore. I serve as the student director at People's Church OKC campus.
Man, my name is Joseph Kellogg. I am the next gen pastor at People's Church, a diverse multi-site church in Oklahoma City. We also have a campus in Minneapolis, and so I get to work with Beau, the Louisiana legend himself. And as I'm realizing, you have two Oklahoma dudes and two guys from Minnesota on here.
I'm Terry Parkman, and thanks for having me out. I am the next gen pastor at Revalue Church out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah, my name is Parker Dickerson. I'm the next gen pastor at Cedar Valley Church in Bloomington, Minnesota.
And so let's talk about the elephant in the room. We have now just dealt with getting our virtual presence consistent. We have a schedule. And now how do we disciple and shepherd these students and these families in this new normal? So let's just talk about the first of the big environment, the big picture. What is the new normal of youth ministry post COVID-19? What do you find different? What do you find the same? You guys have at it.
One of the things that I'm finding the same is a need for community and the need for connection. That hasn't changed. Care hasn't changed. What matters most is that we're more intentional with it. I think we've always had these built-in spaces like on Wednesday nights or Sundays or whenever our game days are for youth, small groups, you name it. We've had these built-in days to really bring that care and community in and have it done for us. But now we have to recraft ways to make it happen. And so I think the thing that hasn't changed is community. I think the things that have changed are the ways that we go about making sure community happens.
I think one of the things, and we sat here with my team just a little while ago, and I really got this from Johnny Wilson a while back, but he said students, ministry, still some of the same thing. Students want to be celebrated. Students want to be connected. They want to be cultivated. And there's one other C, but even with starting with those three, you look at that list and it's like, okay, how are we doing that digitally? Like, what can we do now to engage in that way? Because that hasn't changed. Like Terry said, those things are still present, but now we have to engage differently digitally to make sure those things are there. One of his statements is, you give students the youth ministry that they want, then you gain the right to give them the ministry they need. And so those are some specific areas that we've got to be engaging and be intentional in if we want to see things and see momentum and growth.
I think, just to echo, it's the digital world. It's like now we have the opportunity to provide ministry at any time, wherever a student is, as long as they have a device. And so it's how do we be intentional with the content? What do we have available? I think for the first time ever, every church in America is on the same foot, is that we're all reacting and responding to a global pandemic. Nobody learned this in Bible college. Nobody, wrote a book. If they did, they probably, when they wrote it, everybody thought they were weird. It's like, what are you planning for? What do you know that we don't know? And so we're all in a place where we are trying to respond to what is going on and how do we meet the needs. I love how Terry said, man, we gotta care for our students and provide community that looks completely different. And I think that the power of even this moment where we can come together and collaborate, I think youth pastors and youth leaders and church leaders should unite more now than ever on, hey, how do we answer this question? How do we reach? What is working? How do you do it? And I think now more than ever, the church should look at and look at our greatest resource, which is people. Who do we have that we can empower and develop to reach and expand? Although it looks differently, And then also providing that care component for our leaders. And our leaders are experiencing the exact same thing we are. Many of them are working and navigating, do I have a job next week, or I just lost my job, how am I going to help my family? So it's just care component across the board and still empowering them to make a difference, because we're all wired that way.
I really think what's happening now is there's a revalue of small. Man, growing up early on in youth ministry, you were talking to guys, you were trying to do everything you can to get big. And again, the heart, why do you want big? And you want to see, dude, heaven grow and, like more people come to know Jesus and see more changed lives. But a lot of times we're trying to figure out ways, even our meetings, our conversations have shifted, because we're in meetings on how do we make this big event, or how do we make everything, like, to get more people there. Now it's going, dude, how are we connecting to individual students in a way that's impactful? And so for me, having two teenage daughters at the house, and four kids total, but two that are teenagers, and to see this play out in their life every day, and to see the swings, good days, bad days. But ultimately, these kids are missing the cafeteria table. They're missing their friends that they're used to seeing every day. And week one after school, they're like, yay. But dude, by week two, they're missing that. And what are they missing? They're missing genuine relationships. So I think a shift is for us to, we always can say we value small, but to add a revalue to this in this season, to go, you know what, small really matters. And how can we lead small? How can we make a small impact in a kid's life? That text message matters, that FaceTime with that student matters, that encouragement, liking their posts, commenting on their posts. So I think we're trying to find small ways to make a big impact. And I think the heart always is big impact. But I think the shift is our conversations aren't like, hey, so what inflatables or what, silent disco, like none of those things are in our conversations. They're not in our meetings. It's not about big, it's about small. And I think Jesus led the way in that as well. So I think currently that is a shift that we're feeling, but I believe it's a shift that it's at the heart of God. And I hope as we move forward that we're going to be looking at, how do we continue to care in the small ways that we've been intentionally caring in?
Wednesday night and that value shouldn't change, because we still value that part, but other things that we're doing have to. And Terry, you've been such a huge communicator on Gen Z and on just different things there for students and connecting there. And we've heard over and over that Gen Z, they're producers and they're producing new things and whatnot. And I'll be honest, I'll be the first to tell you that I've heard that and I said, yeah, that's good. But I haven't really leaned into it enough. Whereas now, if I'm wanting to connect with students and get where they are, well, I am in that space now, and it's causing me to really understand that and embrace that and figure out how to best leverage that moving forward.
Yeah, that's good. As we look into this, the big conversation I've been having with a lot of youth pastors is, man, this coronavirus, the pandemic, changes everything about Wednesday nights. No, it don't. A lot of kids are going to want consistency. They're going to want to go back, to Joseph's point, to the cafeteria table. They're not looking for us to create, like, the last thing you want to do is scale a new youth ministry out of a pandemic. Like, stick with the grace that we have of having these ministries in place, because those will be consistent. What is free range is everything that happens outside of your Wednesday night or your youth context. This should be challenging us how to do discipleship different. This should be challenging us how students engage. This should be challenging us on how we distribute content to students. And it should be absolutely destroying our expectations and our assumptions about what works and doesn't work with students. What we see is more authenticity. You remember how everybody said everybody's fake on social media? But what we're seeing is the screen is acting as a barrier so that people feel secure in conveying who they are and how they're feeling about things in ways that we haven't seen before. You have kids tuning in that wouldn't darken the door of our youth ministry, but they're getting saved on social media, on Instagram Live, and on Zoom calls. I think the thing that has to change is everything that happens outside of a Wednesday night. And I think this is where we're challenged as youth pastors to really be listening to what the Lord is saying, especially in regard to discipleship in our day.
Man, Terry, you're right on. And even to Parker's case of like how Gen Z, they're publishers and they, they're producers. And I'll kind of bounce past it to Beau, that we were even talking about where we're getting the most engagement right now. And where we're getting the most engagement is when we do an interview with a student on an Instagram. So like out of all the things we're doing, the most engaged piece is with students. So man, Beau, do you want to talk about just what that's been looking like as the learn that we've been kind of processing?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, I think Parker, you mentioned it earlier, man, just students want to be celebrated. And then, I think I said it earlier. It's like, man, now's the greatest time to look at your team, your core, your students, like the leaders that you're developing, your student leaders, and how you're using their platform and their story. The most powerful thing that any person possesses is their testimony. And I think that should be at the forefront. That's what we should be promoting right now, is your testimony. Jesus says they'll overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Those two things coming together just unites just a powerful thing. And so on Tuesdays, we do an interview with a student. We just say, hey, we want to talk about your relationship with God. How's that meant to you? We do it on Instagram Live, and it streams in. All of their friends now have access to see what God is doing and has done in their life through the local church, through the friendships that they make in the local church, through the leaders' lives. And so it's the connection piece. But I think also, too, Terry, you talked about this just a moment ago, is like, the power of Wednesday night is everything we've been saying. Every youth pastor talks about, man, reach your friends. Now is the greatest opportunity in the history of mankind for students to reach their friends, because it is now, everything is digital. And so we provide an opportunity where evangelism can be at an uprise. And then we have an opportunity for students to reach their friends like never before, and create some of that authentic content where students are sharing, this is who I am. It's no longer about service producing. It's like, how do we produce content that reaches people right where they are? And so I love the student engagement piece. And then on the other side of it is even your leaders' engagement. Man, they have a story to tell. This is a moment where you can help build their platform and elevate their leadership in students' lives. Because what I'm finding is that our leaders that were crushing it on normal Wednesday night, when they would just walk into the room, super extrovert, super just high five, man, some of those guys are struggling right now because their care component, they were relying too much on that gift of walking into a room and just changing the environment. And so that coaching that's coming to them right now is actually creating a better leader moving forward. And then some of those really introverted leaders that are just like, I want to be behind the scenes, and they're helping out. They're creating stuff. They're creating calendars and schedules and connecting with students. And so they're actually providing a whole lot of care right now. Whereas previous to this pandemic, their biggest challenge was, I don't know if I'm making a difference. I don't know if I'm connecting with the student as well as so-and-so. And so it really does afford just this incredible opportunity for your entire team to reach students where they are.
The danger in this season is comparison. As a youth pastor, all of us have had the Wednesday night scroll. After service on Wednesday night, you're scrolling. Oh man, way to kill it. And then you have guys like, man, what in the world did they do? How they have that many kids in a service? It's good and bad. But now what's happened is it's not just a Wednesday night scroll. It's like every day you're seeing what people are doing. And Beau and I are on the same team, and like, man, we just are doing everything we can. It's what we have right now. We can't produce some of the content when it comes to social media and some of that engagement, as cool as other churches, but we can, FaceTime students. We can, put a Zoom call together. And I think that's just these guys might give more specifics, but just to simplify the idea of do what you can with what you have. And your students, they're not looking at the other youth ministries. They don't follow them. They follow you, and they follow your youth ministry. And I think sometimes as we're comparing, they're crushing it. Your kids don't know that. All they know is you, and your voice matters most in this season. And so I think that's just something, that we're learning is to have grace for this season and know that, man, our kids just want us to connect to them and figure out ways, and these guys can get into the practical and what they're doing on the street level. But I just think for us, it's just going, hey, what can we do with what we have? We responded in the moment, and now we're in kind of phase 2 of COVID, of going, okay, it's not what's now, it's what's next, and us trying to figure out new ways to care, to care for students, and to make sure that they're not alone. And so I know these guys can get into practical, but I just wanted to put that out there. Don't compare, and do what you can with what you have. And I believe kids are going to be impacted by that, by you just being intentional in this season with them and with your leaders.
Yeah, that comparison, it's a dangerous game, man, because you can put a whole lot of hours, you put a whole lot of effort into something, and then it just gets squashed in 30 seconds of viewer time, someone else's stuff, right? But I will say this, and one thing that Joseph helped lead us really well is that we can't compare, but we also don't make excuses. Like, there is a lot of available things for us to do. Like, we've literally got together as a team, and we're creating our Wednesday night content as our house, our pastor. Sundays and Wednesdays are a priority right now. So we are going to produce content for that. That is a priority. But we are filming services with my phone. We're utilizing YouTube. It's a free resource. It's a one-cut thing. We don't have the ability or the funds right now to purchase editing equipment, cameras, or anything. So it's one shot. It's announcements, it's sermon, it's salvation. We got a couple guys coming on the screen, and we're saying, hey, come and worship. And so I'm saying all that to say, whoever's watching this, you have resources to get stuff up there. So don't just sit in the world of, oh man, we can't. No, there are things you can do. And somebody said it earlier, there's just a tremendous amount of grace for this season. And I think Terry said, man, students want consistency. And so don't let excellence get in the way of consistency. Get out there, produce stuff for your students. If you need encouragement, just go to our Instagram page. Oh, okay, we can do a little bit better than that. But man, it's producing content that creates engagement. You want engagement, you want community. And so I just add to what Joseph said.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, and I totally understand the idea. Don't compare. There are things I'm learning though from other youth ministries, like that, and it's the perspective. I mean, you look at guys like Tim Summers, Elevation Youth, and I know you were close to him, Joseph, but they gained 13,000 followers last month. Okay, 6,000 or 8,000 probably youth pastors trying to figure out what they're doing. But at the same time, they've got something happening. And so I'm not comparing myself, but I am looking to say, hey, what is it that they're doing well that I can learn from? And the second thing I would say is evaluate what you're doing. Yeah, you've got a schedule. Okay, but you know what? May's coming up. And if we're still in this and you're still doing the same thing and not gaining traction, then there's something else that you could add. I mean, add something, take something away, evaluate what you're doing, right? Look and see the engagement platforms. And then if it's not working or if it's not doing what you think it could, get around the table, start asking some guys, hey, what's happening and what's working? We sat around with youth pastors, like I said, this past week, and Terry helped lead some of the conversation. And we're implementing things that we heard from these guys this week to help make ours better. Not because I said, oh man, if I could do things like Terry's doing and the guys at River Valley, then we'd be successful. God didn't call us to be River Valley. He called us to be Cedar Valley. And there's an expression that we can make that might look similar, but but we're not in competition. This is a kingdom thing. And the more that we can collaborate with and learn from other guys, the better we're going to do. So we collaborate and we evaluate. And if it's not there, throw it out and do something else, but be consistent in that.
Joseph is cold texting me right now telling me to talk about other things. One key thing that's really stood out to us during this time is not spamming students. You know what? Everybody is competing and comparing, but they're competing for the attention of the student on social media. And what we saw initially was a rush of trying to program ministry into every single day and every single hour of a student's life. And those are lanes that a student normally doesn't go seek out youth ministry. They got their Wednesdays, they got their Sundays, much to Beau's point. And so when we start to create content and demand that they access us, what we do is we start to marginalize them. They start to look at us and say, now I have to choose between youth ministry or something else that I would normally do on a Thursday or on a Friday. And so I think staying in the lane is important. But to your point, Charlie, when you're talking about leaders, it's very important to understand that this is a time for us to dispense ministry. More than do ministry, we have to dispense ministry into the hands of our leaders. And the spaces that they create for students to talk are going to be the things that pay off big time after this. It's not up to us to create spaces and do all the talking, because students are publishers. They are producers. And so if we can create spaces and empower our leaders to catalyze conversation and then sit back and let students start to take over in conversation, I think that's what's going to pay off in small groups after quarantine is over. It's going to pay off in the community created on Wednesday nights, but it's all in equipping our volunteer leaders to do the work of the ministry in these spaces. There's not enough of us to go around as pastors to do all that. This is where we have to put our own need for self-significance aside and put the ministry in the hands of our leaders, which is so important and so key. When we do that in the lane that students are used to accessing, I think we're going to see an uptick on engagement after this is done. Number one, feed.bible. I'm going to do it. I'm going to beat that drum. People like Joseph and myself, and I know Parker's used it and Beau's used it. It's a great resource from One Hope to be able to hand to leaders to have formative conversations with students. A growth aspect, though, God's really called me to put up a few guardrails in my life during this time to make sure I don't go off road. It's so easy to look at where we're at and try to squeeze water from a rock and make this season do for us what in-person season used to do. And so 3 things that God's called me to do is live a life of daily repentance, have a heart of forgiveness, and to take my devotion to another level, my devotional time. Because I believe that God is doing something in the midst of this coronavirus that's going to, once we get out of this, lead to a greater outpouring of His Spirit, and I don't want to miss it. So daily repentance, not really meaning like there's overt sin, but of thoughts and attitudes and things like that that just kind of build up, because I don't want residue to build up on my heart. Forgiveness for people that I have frustration towards or that have frustration towards me. And then devotion. There's other conversations that God wants to have with His people during this time, and I don't want to miss out on it on a daily basis. So those are things that I'm leaning into personally to make sure I don't miss out on what God's saying.
Right now, especially, I think youth pastors are probably some of the busiest guys on the market on the planet right now with trying to develop content. But I would say don't let your activity replace the presence or activity of the Holy Spirit. I think it's really easy to think that, like most guys, I've probably been in front of this computer from I'll probably be here 10 hours today easily, just on working on content and stuff like that. But my activity is no replacement for what God can do. So I just echo what Terry said. Don't let this and don't let all the things that you have to do replace what God wants to do in you and through you right now. Second thing I would say, if you're not already, get involved in some other youth pastor community. I mean, if you guys have I know you guys have a network, Charlie, and you're doing that, but looking on groups on some of the stuff that I'm learning and I'm doing better is because of what I'm seeing in groups, even on Facebook, Youth Pastors Only, Download Youth Ministry, their community, because they're sharing ideas and resources that are helping me be better. I learned yesterday how to run a Zoom call live into Instagram Live. And so I ran that last night and had Micah McDonald on there with us. And it was awesome for our students and others to be able to pipe in but I would never have known how to do that without being a part of another community investing in me. So find those. They're available. They're not all the same. They're not everybody's the same denomination and all that jazz, but we're all on the same team. It's a kingdom thing. So that's what I would say right now.
That's so good. It's a constant reminder for me I want to stay in a space and in a heart as a servant. I want to serve my pastor because whatever we're carrying right now, our pastors are carrying way more weight. And so just knowing what's on his heart and where we're going, and we're going in the same direction. And so this is a reminder for me, man. I want to serve the heart of my pastor and whatever serves the church best there. And then also, man, this is a developing season. Like, you as a leader are more spiritually mature than probably most of your leaders. And so what are you doing right now with your leaders to help them grow, help them lead their families, help them lead the people that they have in their sphere of influence? Because if we're going to be better, like Terry said, as a result of this, you got to develop the people around you. So it's not so much about you going up to the mountain and getting the word and then everybody looking to you like, what can you do right now to develop the people around you to where once this is over, your leaders are more developed, Their spiritual maturity has increased. Your walk with God has increased. You are now a sharper leader. Communication is at an all-time high. And this is the moment. This is the moment. Our pastor says it all the time, and I know many leaders are saying, but I really do believe this is a moment for the church to grow and say, hey, we didn't see this coming, but it didn't take us by surprise. Like we still serve a God who's in control. We still serve a God who's on the throne. And so we're going to look to him. So those are two things that in terms of resources, feed that Bible for sure.
I was going to say, man, I listened to Craig Groeschel did a talk about just where we're at right now. And he said this statement, he said, crisis brings clarity. And I believe that this has brought clarity to churches, to youth ministries, and clarity as in like what was working and what wasn't working. And why were we doing that meeting? Why were we doing that? And I just think, man, we got to learn from this season and not go back. There are some things we're going to go back to, youth services and some of the traditional things we do. But I just think that, man, take note of what you've been learning in this season, man, document it. Not for future pandemic, but document it to go, man, I'm going to become better from this. Mm-hmm. And so just knowing that crisis brings clarity, I think that, man, I think churches have been exposed and what was great and what wasn't working. Let's learn from that. And then I think everyone said it, but man, a great resource is Feed, a big advocate. But I think Parker even said it is, man, don't do life alone. Resources all around you. I'm thankful for social media. I'm thankful that we can connect even like this. And then follow at Terry Parkman. And man, he's just a great resource. From Gen Z to chalk art. The guy is a resource, man. But hey, seriously, it's just choose not to do life alone. Right. Refuse to be in isolation. And I just think we're going to learn from this. And I love what even Parker said. Get outside of your normal circles. There's people out there that, man, learn something, walk away. I'm cracking up at all these people that are coming up with like, hey, I'm learning this during this pandemic. So far, after 4.5 weeks or 5 weeks, I have had zero margin to make some new, come up with some new talent or something. But I've been learning from how to lead for sure. So I think that's going to be my biggest learn. I'm not going to walk out of here playing the cello, but hopefully I'll be a better leader after this thing.
Yo, if they're picking up new hobbies right now, they're not doing this right. They are not leading right. No hobbies, no time. Right now, we have to be leading students. Shame on people who cultivate hobbies.
Now, let me throw this. This is my flip it because it's out of Mark 16. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? And so I wanted to say this for me as we wrap up, is that when will we have had a pause button on our lives like we have today? And so I want to challenge every leader to reevaluate your health. I got challenged when I took this role 3 years ago. I felt very strongly in prayer. What I do in the next 5 years will dictate the next 15 years. Because what good would it be if I chased after achievement or whatever and lose my family, my spouse, my wife, my kids grew up in hate ministry, the whole 9 yards? What is the greatest legacy? And I think we have that option amongst us. You see the camaraderie, guys who are watching this video as friends here. I've just joined that. If you don't have a brother or a sister with you, talking real shop, real thing, having someone that you can say hard things to, just talk about the elephants in the room of your life, then you're going to be picked off before it's before you even mature to what God has for you. And I know on a practical note, I would say too, is that we don't have everything together. The moment we figure out we have it all together is the moment that then we start to decline and we will fall into something foolish. So I think if we continue to learn, continue to seek outside resource outside of our tribe, it doesn't matter if you're AG Baptist, Pentecostal, Pentabaptist, whatever you want to be called, Catholic or whatever, is that we're believers and that we can get through this together. And so I would just want to say, guys, thank you so much for your thoughts, your efforts here, and to any leader watching, if God wanted someone else to be leading your students, you wouldn't be doing it. And so let's just hold on to the call and know that we can always grow in qualification, grow and how we do things. But the Lord has you there, and that means then we can be a faithful steward and not fall on the productivity side, because that's not what we're judged on. And so, guys, thanks again as we talk about the new normal. It's funny when we talk about the new normal, we use the word normal. One thing I've got from all of you is that ministry's ministry, people are people. They need care. They need small touches. They need consistency. And I love these 3 of the 4 C's that Johnny Wilson threw out. We'll find the 4th one later. It's to celebrate, connect, and cultivate. And so,
Captivate.
guys, wherever you are,
it's captivate. Thanks, Charlie.
Captivate. Captivate is that I think we're all doing this together. We're figuring out. And so be blessed. And as we continue, let the conversation go forth. And so we start tackling these large issues further and further. God bless, guys.